Hello, and welcome to PremiumBytes, where we shine a light on the unsung world of insurance technology leaders. I am Sudhar Krishnamachary, one of your co-hosts, and with Samir Ahmed, our other co-host, we're here to have meaningful conversations about the evolving technology landscape inside the insurance industry. Let's acknowledge it. Being an insurance firm CIO or Chief Information Officer is one of the toughest leadership roles in today's world. You've got a risk-averse mindset baked into the very fabric of the industry, a legacy estate that must complement the modern tech, and a talent crisis from both the retiring side and next-gen recruiting side. And then you got the slower pace of innovation. We see it because we're right there in the trenches with you as consultants day in and day out. Our mission is to deep dive, have conversations that carry substance, offer practical insights, and help you validate and navigate the relevant challenges of being an effective CIO in the insurance sector. So thank you for joining us on this adventure. Let's jump right into our next conversation.
Hey, Sudhar, what's going on?
Hey, this is great. I'm looking forward to today's discussion. It's a fascinating topic. Something that I know you and I have been talking about for a while. I always empathize with the CIO because I have a feeling that the CEO and the board are constantly bombarding the CIO with like, hey, what are we doing with AI and how are we leveraging the chat GPT and all the other flavors of AI and the tools that come with it. So I'm thinking, you have a point of view on today's topic, which is what's the CIO to do about AI? So let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Just last week I was out meeting with some folks, and there was a CIO in that group. There was a CTO. There was a head of architecture. There was a head of IT. Right. So last week I met with 4 separate individuals, and 3 out of those 4 actually shared that some version of this, that either directly or indirectly through a CEO, there's question coming down from the board or a board member that what are we doing with AI in our company?
I am not kidding. And the person I met with yesterday, and I casually mentioned 2 things. One, I mentioned something about ChatGPT, and exactly verbatim, and he said, hey, we got a mandate top down on doing some POC with it. So I'm actually quite fascinated that this is as critical a topic as we thought it would be. So this is great.
Yeah. So look, right, the main thing here, right, is that maybe try to get a little bit of definition around what we're going to talk about, and before we get too deep into it. Of course, the talk these days is very narrowly around ChatGPT and generative AI specifically, but the nature of this is that from a IT leader perspective, they got to think a little bit more broadly. So when we're saying AI, right, maybe let's define what we mean.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking AI is obviously an overloaded term, and I think it's probably a spectrum. Sometimes it gets bundled into this. Chat GPT and AI are almost synonymous right now, and I haven't seen anyone use one without the other. But I also know that you and I think about it a bit more broadly, and so maybe we start off by acknowledging that it is a spectrum that we're talking about. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I definitely think of it, right, and maybe I'll get a pet peeve out of the way here, right, that people talk about AI and ML. Have you ever heard somebody say, you know what, I'm going to get some flowers and roses?
Right. There you go. There you go.
It's even like a miscategorization of terms. But anyhow, so for purposes of today, yes, we should talk about artificial intelligence as a spectrum of technologies and capabilities that ultimately have to do with automated decision making, right? Machines making decisions of various kinds. And even this idea of generating knowledge is a form of decision making around what to produce, what not to produce, which path to go down, which path not to go down. So this framework of decisions perhaps is a way to talk about this.
Absolutely. And I also think that for some reason, I think the emergence of this large language model and this generative AI has somehow created so much excitement and gold rush that AI ironically is getting bucketed into that one end of that spectrum. But I would think, you're one of those people who has seen this evolve. Is that, yes, why now is because of maybe this gold rush, which is seasonal. But I have to assume like it's not new, and it has been evolving progressively over the very many years, starting from the time that we used to have OCR, the automated character recognition and image recognition existed forever. And that, to me, is a spectrum on this end of the AI where it all started many, many years ago, right? So
yeah, for sure. I'm by no means an expert in this space, a student of it, if anything. But as an observer, I definitely can see that it's an interesting sort of moment in history here of computation, where a number of things have come together to create this current focus. Not to bore folks with too much sort of by being pedantic too much, but I think it merits just some quick acknowledgement, right? That this discipline of artificial intelligence dates back to like the 1950s, when computer scientists sort of got together and actually wrote a paper to say, we should explore the ability to have machines make decisions in a structured manner. And over the years thereafter, there have been multiple efforts and multiple stages of this evolving. And we're kind of like at this stage that the historians are describing as the third wave of innovation in artificial intelligence. And what's interesting about this wave is that it's an intersection of plummeting cost of computation capability, right? Pervasiveness of computation capability through cloud technologies, mobile devices. Everybody has a highly powered computer in their pockets or their wrists, right? Or multiples of these. And then there's been this explosion of the ability to capture a whole variety of data and data in a way that we've never in history had before. So we're not just talking about words on paper that's been digitized, right? We're talking about audio and images and videos and data captured through sensors and all these things, right? They've kind of come together. Then there's this ability to deploy new technology and consume new technology through APIs, right? In a structured and defined manner. So it's this intersection of all these advances that have come together in the last few years that makes it seem like all of a sudden AI has come on the scene.
AI has come alive and is gone wild now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So look, as we talk through, right? So as an IT leader, what can one do with this idea that, hey, AI has come of age and we're in an insurance company and we're dealing with AI, right? We're taking advantage of it, right? So maybe we talk a little bit about, is there a structured way in which somebody can approach this for their organization?
Yeah. No, I also think that there is difference that there has been some progressive growth in the technology capability, but I think this whole idea of generative AI being more creative, creating new stuff out of practically anything, has introduced these concepts that I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that the CIOs life and situation right now is completely different. I don't think they've, I have not heard CIOs and talk about technology and ethics, technology and sustainability, technology and bias, and technology and explainability. There has always been talk about compliance and scalability and affordability and all that good stuff, and security and all that stuff. But these newer things, I just wanted to recognize that new things are getting added into the guiding principles of an insurance CIO's toolkit, and now their purview and their responsibility and their complexity is increased, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. It's an unenviable position that an insurance leader, a technology leader at an insurance company in particular, will find himself or herself. I think they're probably in an executive team, right? They are typically treated as a cost center.
Yeah.
And they're typically being asked by, let's say, the CFO, hey, Miss CIO, I need you to shave off 3% this year.
Right.
And meanwhile, more and more stuff gets getting added to
the list,
their plate.
right? Yeah.
And you're rightfully pointing out, right, that sure, ability to scale, ability to add, we're operating in one state, got to operate in 5 states in 18 months. Everything's got to be secure. Got to, satisfy the auditors and state regulators. This has always been part of their job, but now talking about, hey, we've got underwriting capability that is, rooted in a machine making some assessment. It's got to be explainable, and it's got to be unbiased, and it's got to be consistent with ethics. These are absolutely new concerns for the technology organization, right? As a company, as a society, maybe it's nothing
absolutely
new.
I agree with you, right? Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's important that you highlight this because again, it's an unenviable position that leaders are finding themselves in.
Certainly think that they have a very, very thankless job with competing priorities and not enough time and resources to be able to execute on all of this. But having said that, I think you and I have briefly talked about this in the past, is that we still need a framework to evaluate AI as we are discussing, like it's a progressively evolved capability, but evaluate that in the context of an insurance company. I'm curious your thoughts on how should generally we should put a framework around it.
Yeah, so I do always think about, right, we need mental models to approach problems, especially complex ones, and at the risk of knowing full well that all models are wrong, some are helpful, right, we still should think about this in a structured way. So
no pun intended in the use of the word model in the discussion about AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you got to have fun, right? So look, the very first thing that I have been asking myself, that there's a lot of excitement around artificial intelligence and various aspects of it, and yes, we should be excited about it because the future is bright and lots of possibilities. But that being said, right, we're really still in the business of insurance, and I don't think that I've seen anything or heard anybody talk about any fundamental change to how the business of insurance is operated. We're still talking about developing products to mitigate certain kinds of risks, finding a way to distribute those products, underwriting, rating, servicing the customers, paying claims, managing your investment portfolio, and running a business in a sustainable manner, right? Fulfilling your promises. So far, I've not really seen anything or heard anything that is saying that fundamental business model or even operating model is changing.
Right.
I don't know what you think about that, or if you've heard anything differently.
I think there's merit in digging a little bit into this, in the sense that I agree that in this particular phase there isn't a threat to the value chain itself. But I want to pick your brain on an interesting concept that, you know, when the internet exploded in the early 2000s to mid beginning of 2000s, there was this hypothesis that the broker will be disintermediated, and that the value chain will shift completely from a consumer to a carrier, that most carriers will be a direct-to-consumer. And I don't think it has panned out. If anything, I feel like the brokers have a renewed identity in the ecosystem. But I'm curious if this new phase of emerging AI-based technologies feels like there's any hypotheses around any entity in the ecosystem or the value chain being disintermediated.
Yeah, so I don't have a crystal ball, right? So hard to say, but I don't see any signals where they point in the direction of some fundamental change. Will there be change? Yes, absolutely. One should anticipate that. And I think one can look at an insurance organization and the insurance value chain maybe to sort of start to understand that where can this kind of technology be applied, knowing that it will not be applicable to the same degree in every part of that value chain. So, for example, can artificial intelligence help us with creating a brand new product that no one's envisioned before? Well, maybe, but if you think about it, right, what does having a new product imply? It means that either somebody's identified a new kind of risk that didn't exist before, or somebody's identified a new way of mitigating a known risk, and maybe the third aspect is maybe there's a new way to finance that mitigation of the risk, right? So I don't know. It feels like that's an area where artificial intelligence potentially is not really at a point of doing something significant. But on the other end, when we're talking about the ability to underwrite a risk, seems like there is decent applicability for artificial intelligence here, right? We're talking about the ability to compute, ability to process data, ability to process multiple kinds of data, having still some notion of rules, and ultimately coming to a decision about, should I take on this risk or not? If I take on the risk, what's an appropriate way to price it? So just as an example, right, those are two areas where in one area you can see the signal that the technology has a more relevant and readily accessible applicability than the other. So one could go down the value chain in this structured way to identify the hotspots, if you will, where one should explore.
Yeah. No, I think that's resonating with me in just as a piece of I shouldn't say advice, but just a guidance we can offer as an unbiased third party to the CIOs is that maybe that's an area for them to explore as they embrace this new technology. Another area that I want to just pick your brain on is this whole idea of enterprise architecture. I feel like there's a renewed focus, need, and criticality of thinking about it as a technology that needs to be architected in a very thoughtful way, because everything else that came before us I felt like more foundational, but now we're talking about technology that impacts everything throughout the value chain, top to bottom, left to right.
Yeah. Look, this is one of those things we should set aside time and unpack that topic by itself around enterprise architecture, what its role could be, and is it sort of a missed opportunity, or is there still something to be gained out of it at an insurance company? But as it relates to artificial intelligence, I think, look, it's in my kind of judgment still a little premature to declare that this is how you ought to architect for the future. But therein is the relevance of enterprise architecture, that architecture fundamentally is something that enables ability to adapt in a changing context. It could be, change in who the users are. It could be change in the security posture. It could be need of new features, what have you, right? Fundamentally, architecture is the ability to respond to change. If nothing changes, you don't need architecture, right? You come up with something and it's frozen in time, and it's the best thing that could be there, right? You don't need anything to change. But of course, we know the realities of this industry. So I think recognizing that, this is going to permeate across the organization. B, we don't know where it's going to land. So we should not lock ourselves into a particular way of operating. I think are key aspects, and the discipline of enterprise architecture is the right one to enable that.
Yeah. Are you seeing any emerging patterns in thinking about AI, ChatGPT, and how those patterns might apply to certain value chains? Like, where I'm going with this, Samir, is there's obviously, from McKinsey to Deloitte to everybody in between is like, oh, ChatGPT against, claims and fraud analytics, or large language models against creating innovative new products and things like that. I'm trying to pick your brain on, is there any patterns emerging, or it's too early?
I think anybody that claims that they have an answer is probably being a little bit too optimistic, if I'm being generous. Look, if somebody has an answer, there should be a clear winner right now, because the rest of us don't, right? So there must be a clear winner, but you don't see one in the market. I think people have hypotheses, and some people are further along in testing them. Others are still at the stage of, well, what questions should we explore? Hopefully no one is at the point of AI what, right? So,
Right. I mean, data and analytics and machine learning, I think maybe we could pivot a little bit to talk about, like, as a CIO, I have to assume that the prevalence of machine learning and data has been there for at least 10 years, if not prior to that, right? So in terms of winners, I think, there's an adoption of data and machine learning and generating insights based on models and things of that nature has been evolving, and there's no change there. If anything, it's probably accelerating. But now onto the large language models and generative part of this AI. But I feel like, there's absolutely a chaotic approach right now to what use case and where to apply.
Yeah. Look, even with the, analytics and machine learning, I don't know that there's a proven method of this is how analytics ought to be organized and applied in an insurance context, and anybody that's not doing it just needs to get on board. I don't think we're at that point. I think different organizations have found success in different manners. Something as fundamental as, does analytics belong under the umbrella of IT, or is it something that should be outside of IT? I don't think there's a clear answer. I think there are successful implementations of it both ways. So I guess when I hear your question about patterns,
we could probe on this, like, fascinating topic, right? So just like the enterprise architecture could be another deeper discussion here. My theory is, or my not theory, my framework to understand this is that insurance and data and analytics has always been together. Like, an insurance company's fundamental capability is to take data about either an individual or a company or a marketplace or a cohort, and then analyze that information. And then so the existence of an actuarial's job is a data intensive, insight intensive, analytics intensive job, right? So I am leaning more towards, like, I don't know if data and analytics is an IT function, especially inside an insurance company. Data and analytics is the core function. So that would be my perhaps controversial hypotheses.
Yeah. Look, I think you rightfully pointed, right, that we can kind of unpack this topic by itself and maybe talk about the merits and demerits of organizing a certain way. The counterpoint, right, to that is that the skill set to actually perform analysis has become this multi-disciplinary sort of the skill set required to be an effective analyst is multidisciplinary. Not only do you need to understand the fundamentals of risk and the statistical methods that go along with modeling the risk and predicting outcomes with reliability, but it also now brings with it the ability to be a programmer, right? How do you write programs that can perform the analysis that you want? But not just that, right? It's not just programming, it's good engineering, right? Because this has got to be deployed, it's got to run at scale, it has to have characteristics of a run in the cloud and consume an API and expose an API. And hey, guess what? There's a machine learning model behind it, and then model has to be monitored for drift, and you have to monitor it for bias. And then once you detect any kind of drift or a bias, then you have to retrain the model. So this whole function comes with these skill sets that which actuary is truly trained in these disciplines, and conversely, which computer scientist is trained in the methods of statistical analysis, so forth. So Anyhow, so like I said,
No,
right, I
but I
think
think
we
what
can
you're
unpack
highlighting
this
is you're
quite
highlighting
in
a
detail.
fascinating intersection and an emergence of perhaps a new CIO, the next generation of CIOs, as I like to call it, will probably embrace the both ends of the spectrum, right? The core business of creating a product, underwriting a product, modeling a product, pricing a product, all the actuarial functions were always outside the IT. But from what I glean from what you're saying is that maybe the next generation of CIO, call it CIO plus CDO, the digital officers, I think there's a convergence of all of this into that function. And so it'll be fascinating to see how the next generation CIOs will become more influential across the space. No more like I'm a CIO and I just do IT, but no, I think it's like spanning beyond IT now.
Yeah, I think so. What's a good framework to sort of think about applicability of AI and what we ought to do as an insurance IT organization with AI? So, question number one is to understand that as an organization, do we believe that the business model and the operating model are changing? Or do we believe that at this point in time, our business model is still the same and our operating model is still the same? And what we're looking at is where does AI make us better, more efficient, so forth. If somebody thinks that they have something that generates a new business model, a new way to produce revenue from artificial intelligence, I'd like to talk, right? But if that's not the case, then we move to the next piece, which is, well, look at where do we anticipate applicability of artificial intelligence in its various forms. Where do we anticipate it bringing some lift? And there, we're talking about not creating a new business unit or anything like that. We're talking about what are the roles within the company, what are the functions of those roles, and where can this technology provide assistance. So as the organization explores this, right, there will be identification of new processes, new functions, and maybe a reduction in some existing functions and processes. So we just touched on it, right? That, well, this whole discipline of ML ops, right, is a new discipline, right? Deploying models, running models, monitoring the models, adjusting the models. This has never been something a company has done before. Now somebody has to do it. As this occurs, this blurring of lines between business and IT is going to increase, and I think recognizing that as some fundamental truths before we go down the path of exploring AI, I think is important. So that to me is like the framework, at least at the moment, for how to explore this.
And what about the whole idea of innovation again has been, it's not like a new term, new phrase. The idea of is this a new innovation or is this a foundational innovation? Should we just treat this as, oh, everybody across the company needs to be trained and educated and things like that? As you and I know, most CIOs are just going through this journey of adopting cloud and hybrid environments and agile methodologies and things of that nature. So how would you put this one in that scheme of things as, hey, this is as big, if not bigger, and that they got to get their entire army of people trained, coached around this? broader AI?
Yeah. So I mean, look, it is training of your underwriting team in the scope of an IT leader. Just let's talk about that question just as a simple, exploration to answer what you're asking. What would you say, right? Is training underwriters in the scope of an IT leader?
It's interesting you say that, right? I think in one of the projects that I was personally involved in, just to look at ChatGPT, the team that was assembled was an underwriter or the chief underwriter with the CIO or the head of IT for the line of business. So although you're probably raising a very controversial point, like should IT be training underwriting, et cetera. But I feel like underwriting, IT, and maybe a few other critical insurance functions are blending, if I can use that word, and lines are blurring.
Yeah. So what I am hoping to provoke out of that question, right, is that the ability to leverage AI tools is as much about every job function itself and people wanting to improve and people wanting to do their job better. It's as much that as it is training somebody on a new technology. So I would prompt folks to think about that. When we're talking about something that helps everybody, is it really an IT function to train people? And I think this is a capability that everybody will have to learn. Just like the ability to operate a web application is something that everybody just has to do. But the ability to operate a mobile device is something that just everybody has to learn. And is that an IT function?
Everybody, I always admire when Microsoft introduced Excel into the world. Insurance companies were one of the first to adopt, and now there's theory that there's billions of Excel-based actuarial models sitting in every actuary's computer, right?
Yeah.
So I think your point is well taken. I think nobody was asking to be trained on Excel; they just got trained and leveraged it. So I think that's maybe where we are with this, right?
Yeah, I do think that the ground reality is that at the moment, that is the expectation that is being placed on IT leaders, that they have to shepherd in this wave of a new capability into the organization. Whether they do everything within IT or not, they have to shepherd the process. I think that is the expectation. And can somebody, prompt enough thinking that, sure, that is the expectation, but is it rightly placed or is it maybe placed elsewhere? I think is a worthwhile sort of conversation.
So, and then again, back to this idea of this next generation of CIOs are bullish about it, and they're taking more and more accountability and responsibility for spearheading some of this from my experience. So I think so. That's a great prompt for a further discussion. I also wanted to ask you if there's anything in terms of innovative practices, what to do, guidelines based on what we are seeing that an insurance CIO can think about. So just some ideas around that table.
Yeah. So I think this is another one of those topics that we will discuss at maybe much more length in a future conversation. But Look, an insurance organization is one that nobody looks towards to be the pallbearer of innovation. Insurance organizations are laggards historically in adoption of new technology, and as we experience the acceleration of adoption of new technology, we only ought to look at some of the most innovative organizations in society to see that the gap between an insurance organization and the leaders in innovation is just widening, even as every organization is going through a plethora of modernization initiatives. So I would offer a mental model again, right, that maybe is a slightly different way of thinking about innovation, which is that we should not focus so much on transformation of organizations through technology projects that bring in new capability and enable new capability, but rather look towards this sector of fast-moving consumer goods, right? Think about your Procter and Gamble's and your Unilevers of the world, where they have taken R&D and made it a process where you have a mechanism to take some inputs and reliably, on the other end, it produces new products. And you don't know which one is a winner, but you know with some distribution that there will be enough winners in there that can sustain the growth of the organization. So I think there's some lessons to be taken from that and apply them to an insurance organization. So innovation just becomes a process rather than every 10 years we go through a transformation.
Yeah, I guess one could theoretically argue that true innovation hasn't fundamentally happened. If you take a life insurance or an annuity business, there's some innovation happening on the P&C side in terms of modeling more transaction based and just in time, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, I would argue, but my counter argument that maybe we should wrap up after this with some closing comments is my counter argument to that is the consumer goods, it's easy to experiment because you make a bar of soap or a can of deodorant and then you send it out to the market, you test it out, it works, it doesn't work, some people buy, some people doesn't buy, but the life of the product itself is short-lived. Versus a policy needs to be vetted by 50 states, and it takes months to years to do that, and then that policy lives for the life of that last policy holder, right? So one could argue that the dynamics of the industry almost inherently stifles that degree of faster innovation. You may have a different point of view on that.
Yeah, look, the forces are definitely different. The context is definitely different, and absolutely, I think it's incumbent upon all of us together to acknowledge that and recognize that. At the same time, I think the sort of fundamental framework is still one that one can leverage, and there's sectors of insurance that are in fact I would maybe even argue much more fast moving than some of these consumer goods. So what am I thinking? I'm thinking of insurance for an Uber ride. You get in an Uber, you get out of the Uber, for that duration there is a risk, and so how can we apply an innovation process to that kind of a product? So anyhow, right, I think your point's well taken that, the dynamics are different, and it's definitely not a pick it up and apply it over here, but more so look towards them for inspiration of what could be done and what is possible. And ultimately, right, how do you get to the main point is for innovation to be a continuous activity rather than moving away from these once a decade transformations that we've had so far.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to wrap it up, is that, embed that as a core continuous capability. Anything else? Any other closing comments?
Yeah, so to wrap up, right, I would say maybe a quick recap that first of all, right, let's not get bogged down with generative AI and ChatGPT. I think it behooves us to think of artificial intelligence as the full spectrum of both technologies and practices that are embodied by this idea. Number two is to go through the recognition that, do we believe we are fundamentally changing our business model or our operating model? And if not, then look towards what is the applicability of these technologies and
across the value chain,
tools
right?
across the value chain.
Yeah.
And once that's done, then understand that the scope of applicability is continually broadening, and you definitely need a much more multidisciplinary approach, which means more collaboration, which means more identification of who brings what skill into the mix, and then adopting a continual innovation process that can take an idea, run it through an exploration, surface which ones are have some legs to them, which ones don't and should be stopped, and continue further with the ones that seem to be more promising. One thing we didn't talk about is products in the market, Sudhar. And I know we're trying to wrap up here, but maybe just one quick thought on the product side, right, is that look, the product space is such that it lends itself best towards what I would call low-hanging fruit. Solving a problem that is relatively easy to solve in a way that can be converted into a product. So yes, look outside, look at products, look to them for inspiration, look to them for maybe quick wins. But I'm not so bullish on them fundamentally changing something. I think that fundamental change comes from within the organization itself. And so,
that's well said. Yeah, no, it's a new era, and I'm going back to this idea that I think the next generation of insurance CIOs are going to have to think about what you just said, and embrace some of this. No, this is a fascinating discussion, Samir. I don't think 30 minutes or even 45 minutes will ever be enough, but I think hopefully we're kind of identifying more and more things that we can deep dive on. That's our objective here.
Yeah, definitely, and would certainly invite folks to share their thoughts. Agree, disagree. Are we thinking about this in a completely foolish way? I'd love to learn more and continue the discussion.
Yeah, I look forward to the next one.
Alrighty.
All right.
Till then.
Thanks.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
And that's a wrap for today's conversation on PremiumBytes, where we shine a light on the unsung world of insurance technology leaders. Thank you for joining us on this adventure and being part of our community. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and follow us. Until next time, take care.